This is Bob Oliphant from the Westford Historical Society and Museum, bringing you episode 39 of season 4 of the Westford Wardsman podcast. The Westford Wardsman newspaper was part of Turner's Public Spirit, a weekly newspaper in Ayr a century ago. In this episode, we'll be reading the Wardsman for the week ending Saturday, September 30th, 1911, and I'll elaborate on what was happening in Westford that week. The week starts with the Westford Center section. Charles L. Hildreth, the second, I'll come back to that, has bought of Miss Ella Hildreth the pleasant home occupied by himself and family for the last 3 years. Ella Francella Hildreth was born in 1849 and died in 1924, was the daughter of Charles Lewis Hildreth, born 1823 and died in 1909. And she sold the house to her first cousin, once removed, of the same name, Charles Lewis Hildreth, who was born in 1879 and died in 1968, often referred to as Charles Lewis Hildreth II, a Westford lawyer and longtime town clerk. In this case, a second doesn't mean he's the son or grandson of somebody of that name, but just another person by that name in the same town. So that's how the town kept track of the two. At the Congregational Church Sunday, Reverend David Wallace presented two timely subjects in an interesting way. At the morning service, he spoke on the Men and Religion movement, and in the evening on the right use of time. At the morning service, Mrs. Cyril Blaney's offertory solo, Just for Today, was especially appreciated. Dr. and Mrs. Edward Atwood returned the first of next week to their home in Daytona, Florida, after spending the summer with northern relatives and friends. His 3 sisters lived at 4 Graniteville Road at this time period. While Dr. Atwood has been in Westford, he has cultivated pedestrianism, taking long walks in our town and to the surrounding towns and villages. Mr. and Mrs. George W. Good, Goode, are removing their furniture from the Fred A. Hildreth cottage, which they have rented for a number of years. For more than 20 years, they have maintained a residence in Westford Village, where they have lived for part of the year, and their friends here regret this change. The Charles Robinson family, who have lived for some time on the Barton Place on Providence Road, are moving to the house occupied for many years by Wiley M. Wright and family. This is probably the 1685 Salt Box House at 1 Wiley Wright Lane. Mr. and Mrs. Fred A. Hildreth were over Sunday guests at H.V. Hildreth's. Miss Elizabeth Hildreth of New York is making her annual visit with her cousin, Miss Ella F. Hildreth. John P. Wright has been busy putting in steam heat in the house recently bought by him of Georgie Gould. Mr. Gould and Mr. Blodgett and family are still occupying the premises. A daughter, named Grace M. Green, was born to Mr. and Mrs. William E. Green on Wednesday, September 27th, 1911, of this week. This is the 6th in a family of 4 girls and 1 boy. The Italian band of workmen employed by Mr. Carver on the Brigham farm got into a lively mix-up at their quarters one night last week. The trouble arose over a game of cards, and those concerned started in to settle their differences with their characteristic methods of force, exemplified with knives and clubs. One of their number ran for help, and Constables Feeney and Boynton, with some other townsmen, went and settled the disturbance. No arrests were made, but 4 of the band were discharged and left town. Commencing on Monday, October 2nd, the afternoon train on the Nashua and Acton Railroad will leave at 4 p.m. instead of 4:07. That's the Maine East-West Railroad, now part of the Boston and Maine system, or what used to be the Boston, Maine. I think it has another name now. The next section is the Westford Grange section. The regular meeting of the Grange took place last week, Thursday evening, at the town hall with a good attendance. A class of 9 candidates will be received at the October initiations. These will be balloted for at the next meeting, October 5th, and a special meeting will be held 1 week from this date, October 12th, conferring first and second degrees, and the third and fourth degrees will be conferred at the next regular meeting, October 19th. The third degree will be in charge of the ladies' degree staff. The program for Thursday evening's meeting was in charge of the ladies' degree staff. A unique and enjoyable feature was a Japanese drill and orchestra. The Japanese costumes were particularly good, and some of the selections had to be given a second time. After the entertainment, Mrs. Josie Prescott treated the company to peaches, and this generosity was much appreciated. The next section is called Accident. Charles D. Colburn met with a very serious accident to his left hand while at work with his ensilage cutter at Charles H. Wright's last Saturday. While clearing the knives from an obstruction, his hand was drawn into the machine, and the fingers and palm of his hand were badly torn and lacerated. The thumb and index finger were badly crushed and the tendons of the fingers cut. The injured man was taken to Dr. Wells and put under ether, and Dr. Wells, assisted by Dr. Sherman, dressed the injury. Mr. Coleman has suffered very greatly, but at this writing, 5 days later, the hand is doing as well as can possibly be expected. And Mr. Colburn feels even if he does have a big farm, a large dairy, a little family, and an aged father to look after, he was fortunate to escape losing his hand. As a member of the Board of Assessors and an industrious farmer, Mr. Colburn is well known and has many friends, and his many friends extend their sincere sympathy for his serious accident. The next section is called Fair. The annual agricultural fair and sale, which has taken place for many consecutive years under the auspices of the Congregational Church, which is their building was now the CPA building on Lincoln Street at Boston Road, was held last week Friday afternoon and evening and proved very successful. The success was due to good weather, a generous patronage, for which those in charge are grateful, and attractive entertainment, a good supper, and last but by no means least, faithful and efficient work among the committees. In spite of the season of extremes as to drought, heat, and early frost, the exhibit was pronounced one of the best in years. The apples were particularly handsome in quality and variety. Elliot Humiston was the decorator, and under his skillful touch, the hall presented a beautiful appearance. The stage was banked with hydrangeas and ferns. There were contributions of fruit and vegetables, or both, from the farms of George Kimball, John and Arthur Wilson, Arthur Burnham, Augustus Bunch, Houghton Osgood, Charles Colburn, Joseph Knight, J.W. Fletcher, Samuel Taylor, William R. Taylor, Clarence Decatur, and the Cold Spring Farm. The Mrs. Atwood, three sisters on Graniteville Road, had a table of fruit, flowers, and vegetables of their own cultivation, arranged with excellent taste. Leonard W. Wheeler also had an entire table with a fine variety of produce of garden, orchard, and dairy. There were also tables for aprons, fancy articles, candy, food, and a post office for the children. The supper from 6 to 8 o'clock in the lower hall proved an attractive feature and was well attended, in several instances the members of an entire household coming in a group. The entertainment of the evening was Harold, the music magician, and he proved a whole host in himself, entertaining both young and old. His skill with the Swiss bells, saxophone, and musical glasses was much enjoyed. Miss Grace Lumbert accompanied him at the piano. The many tricks of magic and attendant witty speech were followed with close attention. At the close of the evening, Samuel L. Taylor acted most acceptably as auctioneer for the fruit and vegetables. The next section is the About Town section. The next meeting of Middlesex North Pomona Grange will be held at North Reading on Friday, October 6th, with the North Reading Grange. A program full of the spirit of differences of opinion is being prepared by the lecturer, and it is expected that live wires will make an incessant charge on each other on the debatable part of the program. This is the About Town section that's written by Samuel Taylor, and he's usually one of the live wires at these sort of debates. The Herbert Fletcher Granite Company on Oak Hill have large contracts for building a seawall in New York City, an infirmary building in Boston, and a large private residence in Andover, this last to be of Deer Island granite from Maine. Eben Prescott has been successful in raising peaches on Francis Hill that would do credit to Hale of Connecticut, the celebrated peach grower. The writer has tasted them with his eyes in the distance and a satisfied close-by distance. Since tasting them in that way and distance, he has been successful in a nearer and more satisfactory taste than by a mere passing by curiosity look. They have got the real Francis Hill flavor to them. I think that's a way of saying that he finally got to try one of those peaches. And I will say that we've bought peaches from that orchard, which is still in existence, and the peaches are excellent, although we haven't bought any this year yet. The Hale Coleman Peach Farm, mentioned here in Oxford, Connecticut, had something like 18,000 bearing peach trees on 180 acres, and it was extremely profitable back in the day. Reverend James Danforth of Tingsboro conducted the services at the Unitarian Church on Sunday in place of Reverend N.H. Hoagland, who fell from an apple tree, receiving injuries that incapacitated him from keeping his exchange with Reverend Benjamin Bailey. The town hall had ample spare room for the joint caucus on Tuesday evening, only about 115 votes being cast out of a total of 450 registered voters. The following were appointed by the selectmen as guardians of the peace, safety, and honesty of the caucus voting: Frank Healy, T. Arthur Wilson, John M. Fletcher, and Walter J. Merritt. The selectmen have drawn Everett Dane and Warren Sweetser to serve on the jury. Next section is the Graniteville section. The members of Court Graniteville, F of A, that's Forsters of America, held a largely attended and interesting meeting in their rooms on last week, Thursday evening. It was decided to hold the annual ball in the town hall, Westford, Friday, October 13th. A committee was appointed, and the hall and music have already been engaged. Reverend M.E. Doherty celebrated Masses in St. Catherine's Church last Sunday morning and delivered an eloquent sermon from the subject, "What profiteth a man if he gain the whole world and loses his own soul?" Reverend Doherty's remarks were followed with keen interest and made a deep impression on the large congregation that was present. Mr. and Mrs. Oscar Nelson and Mr. and Mrs. Joseph Wall attended the debate given under the direction of the Chelmsford Grange and Chelmsford Center on Thursday night, the trip being made in Mr. Nelson's automobile. They report a very pleasant evening. The local baseball season is over for 1911, and Graniteville wins the pennant in the Stony Brook League for the second time in the last 3 years, with a record of 13 victories and only 1 defeat. The Pawtucket Blues of Lowell, who took second money in the league race, were the only club in the league able to win a game from Graniteville. A son, Clarence, was born to Mr. and Mrs. Clarence H. McClenna of Harrisville, New Hampshire on Thursday of last week. Mr. McClenna was a former resident of this village, that is Graniteville, and is now employed as telegraph operator in the above-named place. That is Harrisville, New Hampshire. Many people of this town attended the Groton Fair, which was held in Groton on Thursday. Mrs. Wesley O. Hawks, with her daughter, Mrs. Alfred Hartford of Westford, are visiting relatives in Deerfield at present. Mrs. Lillian McKenna is visiting at the home of her son, Clarence McKenna of Harrisville, New Hampshire. Mr. and Mrs. Oliver W. Sherman of Damariscotta, Maine, who have been spending a few days with Dr. and Mrs. Warren H. Sherman, have returned to their home. These are Dr. Sherman's parents. Bert Derone of Lowell, formerly of this village, was a visitor in town over Sunday. Mrs. Sylvester McEnany, with her daughter of Chelmsford, spent the last 2 weeks at the home of her parents, Mr. and Mrs. David Shattuck. The electric lights that are being installed in the village are about in readiness and expect to have them lighted on Sunday night, October 1st, for the first time. The electric car tracks at Grieg's Corner has been torn up, and the curve in the track at that place being straightened. People will be able to retain their seats now instead of being thrown out of them when the car has been going pretty fast. The next section is the Forge Village section. Until further notice, services will be held at St. Andrew's Mission on Sunday evenings at 7:30 o'clock, beginning tomorrow. Sunday school will be held at the usual hour, which I believe was 4 o'clock, but I'm not sure. The pastor of St. Andrew's Mission was also the pastor of St. Andrew's Church and Parish in Ayer, and the mission was a mission of that church. So the time for services in the mission often varied depending on what the pastor's schedule was in Ayer. Mr. and Mrs. William Burnett entertained at their home on Tuesday the Mrs. Chester Charles and William Blodgett. That's Mrs. Chester Charles and William Blodgett children, as also Mrs. Johnson and daughter of Lowell. Mrs. Johnson is camping at Knops Pond, Groton, and returns to Lowell with her husband after the hunting season is at end. The storm on Monday afternoon played havoc with electric wires here, the village being in total darkness except for a few glimmers from kerosene lamps. Many people from this village are planning to attend the formal opening of St. Catherine's Church, West Graniteville, on Sunday evening, October 1st. The services will be commenced at 4:30 p.m. The Ladies' Sewing Circle held their regular meeting in Recreation Hall on Wednesday afternoon. Reverend A.L. Bumpus was their guest. Stephen Keefe, his sister Mrs. Anna Keefe, and Miss Dorothy Barnes were the guests of Mr. and Mrs. John Carmichael on Sunday. Mrs. Harriet E. Randall entertained a number of friends on Saturday and Sunday at her home. Among the visitors were Walter Brooks of Brockton, Mr. and Mrs. John Bennett and family of Worcester, Andrew Cavanaugh and Miss Roxy Bennett, also of Worcester, and Miss Clara Hammond of Somerville. Miss Hammond formerly taught at Cameron School and is to be married in the near future to Mr. Roberts of Somerville. Mrs. E. Oldham, O-L-D-H-A-M, held a party on Saturday evening in honor of D. Craven, who is an accomplished musician, being a graduate of the Victoria College of Music in London, England, is in this county on a business trip. Besides several selections rendered by Mr. Craven, there were piano solos by Miss Mary Hanley and vocal selection by Miss Rachel Cherry and James Burns, B-Y-R-N-E-S. Archie Bennett, manager of the National Arts Company of Boston, spent Saturday and Sunday at the home of his grandfather, Alvin S. Bennett. John Bowker of Arlington Heights visited at William Burnett's home on Tuesday. John Foster and daughter of Worcester were entertained at the weekend at the home of Mr. and Mrs. Henry Catchpole. Mr. and Mrs. William Burnett attended the Groton Fair on Thursday. Miss Ruth Crane of Detroit, Michigan, is the guest of Mr. and Mrs. James Smith. And that's the news in Westford for the week ending September 30th, 1911. Thank you for listening, and thanks to Ryan Cousins of WestfordCAT for providing technical support. You can find transcriptions and podcasts from the Wardsman at our website at museum.westford.org or visit the Historical Society's Facebook page for more Westford news from days gone by. This is Bob Oliphant, and I hope you will join us for next week's Westford Wardsman podcast. Thank you.